Good morning at yet another coffee conversation of Onguard. My name is Stam. I'm the VP Marketing at Onguard. And today my guest is James Smith of Creditsafe. Welcome, James.
Hi, how you doing?
First, I would like to start with some practicalities. We have the chat open, so if you have any questions for James at the end of the coffee conversation, there's some time for those. So please ask them in the chat and we'll get to that at the end. This coffee conversation will take up around 30 minutes max, so let's get started. James, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Of course. My name is James Smith. I'm a strategic relationship manager at Creditsafe. I've been in the business information world for the last 20 years, and I'm currently working out of our London office, managing some of our largest customers.
Okay, great to have you here. And well, I assume you speak to a lot of your customers on a daily basis, so you also have a lot of knowledge about data and the data that's available. So what data exists and that you can harness as an organization?
Well, that's the beauty of sort of the CRA world. Now it's a myth that we all work off financials, and that's our sort of our only source. There are so many new data fields that are now available. We can harness things like trade payment data. Pretty much every major CRA has a trade payment collection program of some degree. That data is extremely rich, but you've also got new trends. You've got open banking. There's been a massive rise in open banking. You've got CCDS data, which is going to be pivotal when you're looking at alternative finance lending. There are so many data fields that already exist that aren't paid attention to as well. You've got CCJ trends, you've got geographic trends, industry analysis. There's a whole host of sort of good data that's now available that maybe wasn't so prominent 5-10 years ago.
Okay, but that sounds like a lot of different sources. So how I can assume that it's quite a challenge to streamline that data and decide what data you are going to use in what way. So how do you do that?
It's important to understand from a client's point of view, what information is necessary. But certainly from a CRA standpoint, it's important that we're giving as much data as we possibly can, but it's how we lay that data out within the system that makes it better for the end user. If you've got somebody that literally just wants to go in and look at a credit rating and a credit limit, then it gives you the ability to do that. But when you want to dig more granular and sort of really stress test the business, having that trend analysis on financials is important as well. Being able to look back 5 years in the past and understand the growth or the shrinkage of that particular balance sheet. Being able to harness that is so important at the moment, certainly at the moment.
Okay, but then I've read that there's a new kind of trend, also has to do with GDPR and with there comes responsibility with having data, and there's a lot of data in our systems, in your systems, so which is obviously also just available in the market, but there's might be a combination with personal data. So I hear companies going from the big data, just having as much data as possible, to data minimization and only using particularly that part of data that you really need, and well, if possible in an anonymous way, in order to not sit on too much of data that could harm you in case of I think it's in case of when and not in case of there's a data breach. Mm-hmm. So how do you, what's your vision on that?
Well, working with the kind of clients that I do, it's very much B2B. All the data fields that they're retrieving from us and other CRAs, they're going to be all public record data anyway. Yeah. So it's available in the public domain. So for me, when it comes to GDPR, that's all down to the consumer. That's all down to personal data. And you have to ask the question, because data decays. Data decays the day after you've acquired that data, it could be wrong. And so it has to come down to a refresh of the data on a biannually basis or an annually basis, and only retain the data that's important. But certainly when it comes to CRA, commercial data, it's so easy to access now that there isn't really any cause or any need to store that data on a mass basis.
Yeah. Okay. And in this data, did you see, it's a pretty weird time we're in at the moment, with especially you in the UK, with not only COVID, but also Brexit somewhere as a dark cloud hanging above.
Don't mention that word.
Have you seen a change in the demand in the need for data?
Yes, the change in demand comes from an unstable economy. At the moment, insolvencies are very low. They're lower than usual, and the reason they're lower than usual is because there's a lot of government loans. There's a lot of schemes, a lot of grants that are available.
Furlough arrangements and.
Exactly. And then when you also combine that with the fact that Companies House have delayed filing regulations, you no longer have to file your accounts bang on the time. You've now got an extension of, I believe, 6 to 9 months. Now, what that means is that, as from a CRA standpoint, you are going to see a lot less data in terms of up-to-date financials. There are still businesses that will file on time. But when you've got the knock-on effect of filing the accounts, you've got a knock-on the effect of the loans and the grant, or the grants not so much, but the loans being called back in, that's where we're going to see an unprecedented level of insolvencies, in my personal opinion. And at the moment, it's about a trend. I'll keep going back to trend analysis. When you are looking at sort of setting credit limits and reviewing a business, the last 12 months is no longer good enough. And that's why it's important to have historical credit score data primarily, but also then be able to stress test the balance sheet and understand where that balance sheet's going. If their working capital has been decreasing every year for 5 years and it's just shy of 0 at the moment, you have to think, realistically, is this company, when they do file their new accounts, having taken out a 50 grand C-bills, are they going to still be here? Are they going to survive? Now, it's not a credit reference agency's position to start second guessing on algorithms, but the trend analysis is all there for your typical credit manager to be able to look at. What we've done from a Creditsafe point of view is we've launched a COVID impact score. It's a completely free service, so it's not just available to clients, it's available to anybody in the UK. And what we can do is we've developed this score to assess the impact that COVID will have on that business. You send us through a large file of a ledger and we'll append that score for you at no charge. So it's being able to look at what we can do as a CRA to actually help clients, but help the economy through and understand who they're really dealing with.
Yeah. So it's a predictor in terms of, because I can imagine that historical data is really valuable, but in these unconventional times, it might not be the best predictor of the future, because so this is something on top of that to make a better estimation of which industries, for instance, might be in bad weather and experiencing trouble due to the COVID.
Absolutely.
As I understand. Okay. So, and this is available for everyone?
Everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might be nice to share it after this session for the attendees then. Okay. So what else can you do to prepare for an unexpected event like COVID?
Mm-hmm. It's a tricky one, because I don't think there is anything you can do. What we've seen and what we're about to see, as I say, is unprecedented. We've never had to deal with this sort of thing. But it's pretty much every credit manager or every finance director or CFO, there will be a bad debt provision in place. But for some various industries that are going to encounter these serious problems, there isn't really anything we can look at other than trend analysis. It's understanding where this company has been, where they're projected to go. If they say, I'll go back to it, if there has been a decline over the last few years, over the last 12 months, they probably haven't picked up business. The balance sheet probably hasn't improved. And so it's just about belt and braces. It's about ensuring that you have all the data to hand that you need to actually make those credit decisions. Yeah.
And I can imagine there's a lot happening in terms of technologies to improve those analytics. So what are the trends you see there? What kind of new things are there available in the market?
That's an exciting question, because it's clear that we're going through an evolutionary change when it comes to the delivery of credit data. Credit reports used to be a book, and you had to go and visit this book, and then it became a book that you got sent out, and then it was a CD that you got. Imagine that. Imagine receiving a CD once a quarter. So the second you receive it, it's out of date. Yeah. Then the internet came, and it completely revolutionized the way that CRAs operated. But now we're going through that next evolutionary change, and integration is the latest form of technology. So it's, if you've got a credit manager whose team onboard 1,000 new clients a year, that's 1,000 times going into a website, manually looking, searching for the data, going back into their own internal system, approving the order. Is a time that takes, on average, it can take half an hour to onboard a new client. But using the integration within your central system, you just click the Get Data button. And then all the data fields that are relevant to you, all the information that you need is populated within your system immediately. So you no longer have to go through all that rigmarole of going through a website. And so with technology, as technology improves, the products improve. But more importantly to our clients, the cost improves. Now, API technology 10 years ago, you used to be looking at a 10, 20, 30 grand license fee just to access that data. Ours is free. So I believe most CRAs now do a free API. Now, that just means that we are not being charged for technology. You're being charged for the data in the same way you always have been. But how you access that data is entirely your call. So we've got API links into, well, I say our core API links, but then again, most CRAs will also have pre-built applications. So if we use Salesforce as an example, there's a pre-built application that you can just install onto your Salesforce rather than having to key through a complete API.
And what kind of data is then shared with Salesforce?
That data is populated. It's an application that will, if you imagine like your iPhone app store, you install the app and then you get access to Creditsafe via that app. So it's one way of talking to Salesforce. But by far the most commonly used would be just a standard API into the CRA's main servers or main systems. And that's one bit of technology that's extremely exciting. But then as technology improves, delivery of flat files has become much more achievable. So being able to do a complete data dump of every single data field that a CRA owns straight onto your system. Now, that doesn't just have benefits for credit control and finance, but you can then start to harness the data across marketing, across sales, because you've got all of that information to hand. So it's updated on a weekly or monthly basis, which means you're constantly dealing with fresh data that doesn't decay. So it's got, especially on the order to cash process, having that at your fingertips means that when the salesperson picks up the phone to when the FD signs off on the credit line, it's all with the same company. It's all with the accurate data. There are no human errors in that train. So that's particularly exciting, certainly in our world.
Is this also one of the biggest challenges you see if you speak to your customers in the market, that it's the integration of the different systems they use?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges with the integration certainly is actually time. Just because the API is free, it doesn't mean that it's free to implement. because somebody at the other end has to actually build that connection. So if you've got a particularly stretched IT team, then it could be on the back burner and on the work log. And IT departments, they love to be busy. My father was in the IT world for many years, and I doubt he was half as busy as he pretended he was. But there's always a backlog. There's always a workflow that you have to work through to actually get to what you want to be done. And that's if you're lucky and have an in-house IT team. But we've started partnering with people who will actually build this for our clients at a much reduced rate. So yeah, we are taking measures to make sure that the time and an effort to actually build this is no longer.
And it's maybe not only a time issue, but also a priority issue. I mean, we're digitalizing a lot. If I look at my own field of business in marketing, it's been such a big difference in the past 10 years in how we work now, in terms of the systems we use, the tools, and everything is connected with each other. So we spend a lot of effort and time in digitalizing those systems for marketing, for customer relationship, but somehow the financial systems kind of seem to be the last one in line. Always, because and I don't know if that's due to financials being kind of not wanting to spend money, because my husband is a controller. They're kind of reluctant on spending money on those kind of things, but in the end, obviously it pays off to invest in systems and digitalization. But somehow financials are the finance systems or the finance departments are kind of last in line
and when you think of that, it's crazy to say that. Obviously I see the same thing, but easily one, if not the most important role of a business, is collecting the money. It's the hardest sales job in the world. Any idiot can sell something. But actually convincing someone to part with their money, now that's the bit where it takes some doing. I've been encouraged before, and the salesman has done a worldie of a job trying to sell me this brand new flat screen TV, and I've gone, yeah, okay, I'll buy that. But from walking from that discussion over to the till where I actually have to pay for it, then I'm thinking, do I want to do that? Is that money better off somewhere else? And it's that one line that credit controllers face every day, is convincing people that the money isn't better off anywhere else. Yes, you could pay some of your other suppliers if you're struggling, but you're not. You're going to pay me. And tapping into resources like what Onguard provide and the integrated solutions can give the data that's required to actually help that. It's about having quick, immediate data. And especially if you're about to phone somebody who has picked up 3 CCJs yesterday, getting that money out of him is all of a sudden much more difficult. But if you're armed with that knowledge prior to the call, then you're in a much better position to be able to work away and get that done. But I would love to see a trend where CEOs and MDs start prioritizing cash collection and credit control.
In the end, it's a lifeline for your business, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Hey, and the whole COVID situation is obviously there's a lot happening. We he's dead now, but a very famous soccer player, Johan Cruyff, and he always said in Dutch, either nadeel heeft zijn voordeel. So every disadvantage has an advantage. What's the advantage that came out of this whole COVID crisis situation, do you think? What's the good that we gain from it?
So the silver lining across a global pandemic, hard to find one. But certainly if we relate that back to this world, the credit world, there's going to be a lot more attention paid to the finance team. So going back to what we were just saying, I spoke to several of my clients when all this started, and there were conversations that the credit team or some of the credit team would be furloughed, and I thought it was a mental thing to do. And then speaking to them again a month later, no one was furloughed that I was talking to, because the decision was made that actually this is the most important thing. We need this in. So I do think that processes are going to become much stricter. I do think that certainly data, systems, different platforms are going to see a substantial rise over the next 12 to 18 months. Because, as I say, we're not going to see the destruction of the debt in the short term. It's going to be a long-term problem because when these loans need to be repaid, that's when we're going to start encountering the problems. So it's putting something in place now, ready for then, and not wait for then to happen. Because by the time somebody has gone bust owing you 50 grand, it's too late to do anything about it. Yeah. But implementing these solutions that are widely available today will massively help in 12 months' time. So I do think there's going to be a greater take up of sort of richer data. Yeah. But on a tree hugging way, I do think that we're all going to become much closer. I do think that the trends of actually human interaction, human contact is going to be so much different over the next 12 months, because I think we're all grateful when we actually see somebody. Nice.
Yeah. And able to give somebody a hug instead of like waving from
exactly, just waving across the Zoom. But I think we mentioned Zoom. I think technology in that sense and how a company operates is going to fundamentally change over the next 2 or 3 years as well. Yeah. I know several companies who have now closed their London office because they don't need it. They massively downsized it. And because of the working from home, digital processes have to become more apparent.
Yeah. I think we see an uptake already in the market of implementing technologies and further digitalization of processes in order to support the human added value, but to not replace it completely, but to support it. Yeah.
Can't replace it completely.
No, luckily not. Okay, and what are other trends and developments you see in order to cash in the future?
Just on that, I think that the biggest trend I can see is it's going to be more widely adopted. I think in the past, people may have looked into sort of order cash, we use order to cash solutions, and it's scared by the possible complexity of integrating something so deep that goes within all areas of the business. But I think as we move forward, it will become a necessity. I kind of compare it in a way to credit checking 15 years ago. When I sort of was starting out, credit checking was an affordable, an expensive luxury. Yeah. But now it's become an affordable necessity. I used to have to sell credit reports for £30 for one. So if you were just buying 100 reports a year, it was costing you a couple of £1,000s. But now, because of, again, harnessing technology, the take up of it, the cost has absolutely plummeted over the last 15 years on an upper report charge. We look at Companies House, they're now giving away their data for free. Whereas that used to be a couple of quid per hit. And I think order to cash solutions are going to go the same way. I certainly see a wider adoption over the next sort of 12 to 18 months in terms of just having access to all that data at your fingertips, being able to tap into a process system that can do everything for you that you no longer need to do. It frees up time. A credit controller's sole responsibility is collect money, but there are so many other boxes that have to be ticked throughout that day that sometimes it can actually impact on the time they get to spend with their clients. Also, we all know people are guilty of paying people they like. And so if you have more time to build those relationships, because all of those mundane tasks are now taken care of for you, then we're going to see a huge trend with that happening over the next year or so.
Yeah, that's what I hear very often from others as well. Explain that, and that's actually what also due to COVID we were forced to get even closer to our customers, and that's that's really a good thing.
Yeah, it's about taking time to get to know them and work out
and understand them and work sort something out together.
Exactly.
Okay, nice. My final question, due to time, is always, do you have a golden tip for the listeners, viewers, listeners? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's about embracing change. It's embrace the technologies that are there to help you with your role. Yeah, as I said a few times, there are so many things that are now available, and that people may have looked at these 5 years ago and think, oh, no, I'm not paying that. But cost has come down with technological advances. Cost goes with it. Cost always plummets. Look at the price of a 4K TV 3 years ago. It was ridiculous. Now you can pick one up for a couple of £100. Yeah. And so it's about embracing the way that we're going to be moving forward, and harness these technologies to really give you a helping hand.
Nice. Thank you very much for attending and joining us today in this coffee conversation. We will be sending the recording in case you missed it today. So that's there were some people not joining us live. And with that, we'll also add the link to your
impact score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So James, again, thank you very much. If you would like to join another coffee conversation, there are many more scheduled. You can find them at onguard.com/events. So hopefully I'll see you next time. And yeah, wish you a great day. Thanks, James.
Thank you very much, Flo. Bye-bye.
Bye.